of Stephen Fry. Now, I'm not sure if you're familiar with
Oh, I
this.
know Stephen Fry. He was a Cambridge man, a great comedian. Yeah.
Yes, yes. Well, there was a video of somebody asking Stephen Fry for his take on God, as you know, he is an atheist. And I'm gonna just read out a quote from the video. And I don't want to offend anyone when I read this quote, but I just want to hear your take on it.
I'm not easily offended. Worry not. Yeah.
Fantastic. So Stephen Fry said, when asked what he would say if one day he came face to face with God, he said, "First of all, I'd say, bone cancer in children, what's that about? How dare you? How dare you create a world where there is such misery that is not our fault? It's not right. It's utterly, utterly evil. A world where there are insects whose sole purpose in life is to burrow into the eyes of children and eat their way out. Why should I respect a capricious, mean-minded God who creates a world that is so full of injustice and pain?" That is what I would say. What is your reaction to Stephen Fry's take there?
Well, and we only get on the Joe Rogan experience, which was quite a great experience. We only got to discuss, we discussed the problem of evil in a very short part of the interview, that we didn't get into it in a great deal of depth. But there are actually two facets to the problem of evil as it's proposed. One is the problem of human evil, of things that man's inhumanity to man, as it used to be called. And I think that is very adequately addressed by what's called the free will defense. It goes all the way back to St. Augustine. And that's what I discussed with Joe Rogan, the Judeo-Christian view of this, the Jewish view, the Christian view, has been that God believed, or God thought, it was worth the risk to create people with true freedom, who could make choices that were necessarily harmful to themselves, to other people, and which went against God's desires for human flourishing, because it was better to create actual agents with that freedom than it was to create a world full of puppets or machines. He was trying to spread blessing to the planet he created by creating other beings who could genuinely love him and each other and appreciate what he had created. I find that entirely a satisfactory answer. Where things are more difficult is with the problem of what's called natural evil. And this is what Stephen is referring to in that quotation, that nature has this aspect. We see the evidence of design in nature, but we also see evidence of decay and destruction and things that end up being harmful to humans. Now, if I were only a proponent of the theory of intelligent design, but was not also, for example, a Bible believer. I'm a Christian, and I believe the witness of the biblical text. I don't think I would have the explanatory resources to make sense of natural evil. And in fact, if you read some of the natural theologians from the end of the 19th century or the early 19th century, you get the feeling, as they're describing nature, that they've never really left a manicured Oxford or Cambridge college garden, that they think that nature is only pristine. But of course, we know that nature is not pristine. We see evidence of design, but we also see evidence of decay, and we see destructive processes at work in nature. Now, from the standpoint of biblical Christianity, that's exactly what you should expect. The book of Romans, written by St. Paul, tells us that from the things that are made, the unseen qualities of the Creator, his eternal power and divine nature, are clearly seen. That's one thing we see. But he also tells us that nature is in bondage to decay, that it's been subjected to bondage, and that it's subjected to decay, that there are processes of degradation at work in nature. And that is, in fact, what we do see. So on the basis of biblical Christianity, I would expect to see both those things, and we do. So that's confirmation of that, of a biblical ID perspective, if you will. Now, the question is, why was that? That raises a further question, which is, well, where did that impulse, where did that come from? Why is there decay in nature? And the Bible tells us a backstory. It has a backstory that has to do with not only the rebellion of human beings, but the rebellion of angelic beings that were put in charge of nature. And it doesn't tell us the whole of the backstory, which is somewhat frustrating, but it implies that the subjection of nature to decay was also the result of rebellion against God, that there was to be either a dominion of humans over nature, such that that nature would continue to be pristine as God had made it, or perhaps that it had something to do with the way in which we rebelled against God, that we lost that power to control nature and to keep it in that pristine state. But the end of the Bible tells us that in the end of all things, that too will be put right, that nature will again have that sense. Different metaphors are used. The lion will lie down with the lamb. There'll be a tree of life that will bring healing, and there will be no more tears and no more sadness. Because the Bible is so incredibly concerned about human suffering, and the long arc of the Bible is about the restoration of all things, our proper relationship with God, our proper relationship to each other, our proper relationship to the environment. And because I have so many other reasons for believing the biblical witness, I take that affirmation of the backstory on the authority of the scripture that I have other reasons to believe. I don't think that the backstory is fully developed. So we're not told all the details of what happened and how the fall of created beings ended up affecting nature, but we are told that it did, and it caused this degradation. So this is an area where I think religious thought and scientific thought come together. I think it is, in the broad sense, it provides an adequate explanation for natural evil, but in all the specific details, there's things that we're not fully told. But I personally have reasons for accepting the witness of the Bible, so I'm willing to accept the uncertainties that come with that. That's kind of where I am on the topic. And the other thing I would say is that because, and this is the extraordinary thing about the specifically Christian message, that Jesus Christ is presented as God in the flesh who comes and suffers in the same world that we've been living in. And so there is an affirmation that God himself is as acquainted or more acquainted with human suffering than even any individual person is experiencing, that he's experienced it himself. He experiences and empathizes with us. He in our suffering. And so, whereas it might be possible to think of sort of an abstract deity as far removed and indifferent to the human condition, the message of the incarnation in Christianity is that God is anything but. He is God with us, in that name that the Messiah is given, Emmanuel. So these are deep questions. It takes a long time to kind of deliberate about all this, but I'm satisfied that God is with us in that, and that there is a plan for reversing those things that are most painful in every person's experience.